There's a special kind of horror that comes from realizing the danger wasn't hiding in the dark. It was laughing with you, swimming beside you, close enough to touch, while you never noticed a thing. That night, I didn't fail to lock the gate. I failed to recognize the monster already inside it. I'm 28 years old now, and I've lived long enough to understand that fear doesn't always arrive with warning signs. Sometimes it comes disguised as laughter, splashing water, and music drifting through a warm Florida night. Sometimes it waits until you're drunk, distracted, and convinced you're safe. But I was 22 when it happened, still living in my parents' house in Orlando, still thinking I was invincible just because the property was gated and lined with security cameras. That belief nearly got someone killed. My parents owned a large house on a quiet suburban street, the kind of place people assumed was secure just by looking at it. The backyard was enormous, enclosed by a tall fence and iron gate, with a pool that practically begged for parties. My parents both ran their own businesses and traveled constantly for conventions and meetings, and by mid-May that year, they were scheduled to be gone for almost a full week. When they told me they'd be out of town, I asked casually, like it was no big deal, if I could have a small pool get-together. I emphasized small. I promised no alcohol, no loud music, and that everyone would be gone by 10. I even said I'd keep the neighbors happy. They hesitated, but eventually agreed. That should have been the moment I either followed their rules or didn't throw the party at all. Instead, I broke every single promise. The next day, I called 6 of my closest friends. Just 6. I told them they could each bring one guest if they wanted. Almost immediately, my phone lit up with excitement. People offering to bring snacks, drinks, and a little something extra. I should have shut that down. Instead, I said, yeah, sure. Just don't go crazy. That was mistake number 1. By 8 o'clock the following night, my backyard was alive. Bathing suits, laughter, clinking bottles, music echoing across the water. 13 people total, including me. Not outrageous, but definitely more than my parents approved. The fire pit crackled near the pool, giving off warmth and light. My Bluetooth speaker bounced from one playlist to another as people took turns DJing. The smell of chlorine mixed with alcohol and smoke, and for a while, everything felt perfect. Most of my friends jumped straight into the pool, diving off the board, dragging their girlfriends in with them, splashing and yelling like kids on summer break. I stayed near the fire pit, beer in hand, watching it all unfold and feeling proud. Too proud. Time blurred the way it always does when you're drinking. 10 o'clock came and went without me noticing. Then 10:30. By 11, I felt that familiar twinge of guilt in my chest, my parents' rules floating back into my mind. I told myself I'd shut things down soon. I went inside to grab another beer, the house cool and quiet compared to the noise outside. As I walked through the kitchen, I heard something that made me pause. Leaves rustling. It came from the side of the house, near the bushes lining the fence. I stopped and listened. The sound wasn't frantic or loud, just subtle movement, like someone brushing past branches. But my house was gated, locked, covered in cameras. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone went around front to leave. Maybe a couple slipped away to make out. Maybe it was an animal. I grabbed the beer and went back outside. By then it was around 11:30. I announced that the night was winding down, that people should start finishing drinks and heading out soon. Some groaned, others laughed, but no one objected seriously. That's when I noticed something odd. 10 people were still in the pool. 2 were missing. I did a quick scan of the yard. No one by the fire pit. No one near the fence. I figured they might have gone inside. I walked back into the house and made my way upstairs. Halfway up, I heard laughter and then moaning from one of the guest bedrooms. I sighed. I knew exactly what that meant. Normally, I would have shut that down immediately, but I was drunk, tired, and honestly just wanted the night to end without drama. I turned around and headed back downstairs, planning to deal with it later. I never made it back to the yard. A scream ripped through the night. Not laughter, not play acting, pure terror. I dropped the beer and ran. When I burst into the backyard, the first thing I noticed was the water. The pool's surface was streaked with red. For half a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. Then people started screaming, real screaming, and one of my friends was pulling his girlfriend out of the pool, yelling her name over and over. Blood poured from her leg. She was sobbing, clutching at him, saying she felt arms wrap around her underwater, pulling her down. She kept saying she felt something sharp, something cutting her. Before anyone could react, a man surfaced. He wasn't someone I recognized. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Tall, long, scraggly hair plastered to his face. A patchy beard, tattoos along his arms. He wore camouflage cargo shorts and nothing else. He climbed out of the pool like he belonged there. Then he ran, straight toward the front of the house. Chaos erupted. A couple of my friends chased after him, shouting, but he vanished into the darkness beyond the gate. It happened too fast, too clean. We rushed the injured girl inside. Someone grabbed towels. Someone else grabbed my phone. I locked the doors and called 911, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The operator stayed calm while I panicked, explaining there'd been an intruder, a stabbing, blood everywhere. Paramedics arrived first, then police. The girl was rushed out on a stretcher, still conscious, still crying. One by one, my friends left, silent, shaken, traumatized. Then the police asked to see the security footage. That's when everything became worse. We rewound the cameras to earlier in the night, right around the time I'd heard the rustling. There he was, the man. He scaled the fence like he'd done it before. No hesitation, no urgency. He dropped onto the grass, walked casually along the side of the house, and waited. Then, this still makes me sick, he walked straight into the pool area and blended in. No one questioned him. No one noticed, including me. The footage showed him watching, waiting, choosing. The police took the video, but despite the clear footage, he was never identified. No arrest, no closure. When my parents came home, I told them everything. They didn't yell. They didn't scream. They just looked at me with disappointment I'll never forget. I was never allowed to have another party in that house again. And to this day, when I hear water moving at night, I still think about how easily evil slipped into my backyard, how it laughed with us, floated beside us, and waited patiently for its moment. I was 17 years old the first time I realized how thin the line really is between a party and a crime scene. At that age, everything feels invincible. You don't think about consequences, you don't imagine danger lurking where laughter is loudest, and you definitely don't expect violence to creep into a place filled with music, alcohol, and graduation celebrations. That illusion shattered for me at Daryl's pool party, the night that taught me how quickly fun can rot into terror. Daryl was one of those guys everyone knew, not because he was particularly kind or talented, but because he had everything. Big house, big backyard, big personality. His parents were always gone, his parties were legendary, and his popularity was unquestioned. If you were invited to Daryl's party, you went. No hesitation, no excuses. I wasn't close with Daryl, not really. We existed in the same orbit, but never collided. Still, when word spread that he was throwing a graduation pool party while his parents were out of town, I jumped at the chance. It felt like one of those milestone moments you were supposed to attend, one of those nights you'd look back on later and say, yeah, I was there. I hitched a ride with two friends who knew Daryl better than I did. When we pulled up, I remember thinking his house looked like a resort. The backyard lights glowed against the water, music pulsed through the open windows, and kids spilled across the lawn, the deck, and the pool like ants swarming sugar. There were easily 50 or 60 people there, maybe more. At least a quarter of our graduating class. It felt unreal, like something out of a movie. Red cups everywhere. Laughter echoing off the house. Someone yelling lyrics off-key. The smell of chlorine and cheap beer hanging in the humid summer air. We stepped into the backyard and were immediately swallowed by the noise. The first thing we did was try to find Daryl. It felt rude to be at his party without saying hi, even if we weren't close. We asked a few people near the pool if they'd seen him. No, not in a while. Thought he was upstairs earlier. He was out here like an hour ago, I think. The answers were vague, uncertain, shrug off. At first, none of us thought much of it. It was his party. He could be anywhere. Hooking up with someone upstairs, probably. That was the assumption everyone seemed comfortable with. So we went about our night. My friends joined a beer pong game near the fence while I hovered nearby, sipping and people watching. I didn't bring a swimsuit, so I stayed dry, content to watch bodies splash and dive into the glowing blue water. Music blasted nonstop. Someone fell in fully clothed and came up laughing. Someone else shouted about losing their phone in the deep end. Time blurred. As the night wore on, I noticed something odd. Not alarming at first, just strange. People kept asking where Daryl was. I heard it in passing conversations. Yo, have you seen Daryl? Where the hell is Daryl? He hasn't answered me in like 2 hours. The tone was still casual, joking even, but the frequency of the question grew. It was like his absence had become a low hum beneath the party noise. Eventually, my 2 friends and I found ourselves standing in a loose circle of people all discussing the same thing. No one had seen Daryl in a long time. He wasn't answering texts. Calls went straight to voicemail. Still, nobody panicked. He's probably upstairs, someone said. Or passed out somewhere. Another joked. Classic Daryl, someone laughed. We accepted those explanations because they were easier than questioning them. Eventually, I had to use the bathroom. Inside the house, it was chaos. Music louder, bodies tighter, people spilling through hallways. There was a line for the upstairs bathroom and a longer one for the downstairs. Someone mentioned there might be another bathroom in the basement. That was all I needed to hear. I slipped past a group making out on the stairs and opened a door in the hallway that I assumed led down. Sure enough, a staircase descended into darkness. I flicked on the light at the top and headed down. The basement felt colder than the rest of the house, the air thick and stale. It wasn't finished like the rest of the place. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, storage boxes stacked along the walls. The hum of machinery somewhere deeper below. There were only 2 doors down there. The first one I tried opened into a small closet, cleaning supplies, nothing else. The second door sat at the far end of the basement. It was closed. I tried the handle. Locked. I knocked lightly, assuming maybe someone was inside using a bathroom. No answer. That's when I noticed something strange about the lock. It was flimsy, one of those cheap interior locks you could probably open with a fingernail. I hesitated. I knocked again. Louder this time. Still nothing. I don't know why I didn't just turn around and go back upstairs. Maybe curiosity. Maybe annoyance. Maybe the alcohol dulling my instincts. I slid my fingernail into the lock and twisted. Click. Before opening the door, I knocked one last time. Just in case. No response. I opened it. The room beyond was almost completely dark. It looked like a boiler room. Industrial, unfinished. A faint yellow glow came from a machine in the far corner, barely illuminating the space. The room was cluttered with old tables, a washer and dryer, boxes stacked like walls. The layout forced you to walk in a rough circle if you wanted to navigate around everything. And then I saw movement. A person, standing near the back of the room. My heart dropped into my stomach. The figure ducked down quickly, disappearing behind something. My first thought wasn't fear. It was hope. Maybe that's Daryl. Hey, I called out. No response. I fumbled along the wall until my hand found a dangling light switch, a pull cord hanging from the ceiling. I yanked it. The light snapped on. What I saw next rewired something in my brain forever. Daryl was on the floor. He was lying on his side, half-curled, his clothes soaked dark. Blood pooled beneath him, smeared across the concrete. His face was pale, his eyes half open but unfocused. For a terrifying second, I thought he was dead. Then I saw his chest rise. Barely. Oh my God, I whispered. I stepped closer, panic setting in. There were multiple stab wounds in his legs, deep, ugly gashes. Blood everywhere. Too much blood. I turned toward the doorway, my mind racing, about to scream for help. And that's when I heard footsteps. Fast. Rushing. Someone bolted past the door. I caught a glimpse of his face as he turned his head for a split second. Todd, a kid from our grade. Quiet. Withdrawn. The kind of guy people whispered about, but never really knew. The kind who sat alone at lunch. The kind people mocked behind his back. The kind who had been bullied by Daryl's friends for years. Todd sprinted up the basement stairs and vanished. For half a second, my instincts told me to chase him. Then I looked back at Daryl bleeding on the floor. I ran upstairs screaming. Call 911. Call the police. People froze. Music cut. Conversations died mid-sentence. I pointed toward the front door. Todd just ran out. He stabbed Daryl. Multiple people turned just in time to see Todd tearing across the lawn and disappearing into the night. Witnesses. Thank God. We rushed back downstairs with a crowd. Phones already dialing emergency services. Someone grabbed towels. Someone else cried. Someone threw up. Daryl was rushed to the hospital. He survived. The police arrested Todd that same night. The first house I ever bought was supposed to represent freedom. I was finally on my own, finally past cramped apartments, roommates who never paid on time, and landlords who ignored broken locks. This house was mine, a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, but it had one thing I'd always wanted: a backyard pool. Nothing fancy, just big enough to swim, drink with friends, and feel like I'd finally made it. So when the paperwork was signed and the keys were in my hand, I did what anyone my age would do. I threw a housewarming party. It was a Friday night, nothing wild, just a handful of my closest friends. No strangers, no plus ones I didn't recognize. People I trusted, people I'd known for years. We drank, laughed, played music, and christened the pool with our feet dangling in the water while telling stories about dumb things we'd done growing up. As the night went on, people slowly filtered out. A few friends were too drunk to drive, so I insisted they crash on the couches. Two of them, Rob and Dan, were completely out of it, slurring words, tripping over nothing. I took their keys and told them they weren't going anywhere. By the time midnight rolled around, the house had settled into a comfortable quiet. Empty cups littered the counters. Music was off. Rob was snoring on one couch, Dan stretched awkwardly on the other. I did one last sweep of the house to make sure everything was locked, then headed upstairs to get ready for bed. That's when I heard the splash. It was unmistakable, the sound of someone entering the pool. I froze mid-step in my bedroom, toothbrush still in my hand. What the hell are they doing? I muttered to myself. I figured one of them had woken up, decided a late-night swim was a brilliant idea, and jumped in fully clothed. I was annoyed more than anything. There were no clean towels outside, and the thought of soaking wet footprints on my carpets made my teeth grind. I walked to my bedroom window and looked down into the backyard. Someone was standing in the pool, just standing there. The pool light cast a dim blue glow, and I could see the water lapping gently around their waist. They were wearing a dark shirt, black, maybe navy. I squinted, trying to figure out if it was Rob or Dan. I couldn't remember who'd been wearing what earlier, and my head was still buzzing from alcohol. "Get out of the pool," I called down. "What are you doing?" The figure turned its head slowly and stared at me. Not waved, not laughed, just stared. The longer it went on, the more uncomfortable I became. 10 seconds passed, then 15. They didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, as far as I could tell. Seriously, I snapped. "Get out." Still nothing. A chill crept up my spine. I turned away from the window, irritation shifting into unease. Fine. If yelling didn't work, I'd go down there myself. I pulled on my shoes and headed downstairs. I was halfway down the steps when my stomach dropped. Rob and Dan were both asleep. Deep asleep. One sprawled across the couch, the other curled up with his shoes still on. Both breathing steadily. Both completely unconscious. The house felt suddenly too quiet. My heart started pounding as realization hit me in a slow, sickening wave. Whoever was in my pool wasn't supposed to be there. I rushed into the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife from the block. My hand was shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I told myself to stay calm, to think rationally, but fear was already in control. Before going outside, I flipped on the backyard light. The pool was empty. The water rippled gently, disturbed recently, but there was no one in it. I stepped onto the deck, knife held uselessly at my side, and scanned the yard. Shadows stretched across the grass. Trees swayed slightly in the breeze. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I leaned over the pool edge, peering into the water, half expecting a face to rise up and stare back at me. Nothing. Just my own reflection distorted by the ripples. Then I looked toward the back of the yard, near the trees. For a split second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but I was almost certain I saw someone sitting on one of the lower branches of a tree near the fence. A dark shape. Still. watching. Even with the knife, I couldn't make myself walk any closer. Every instinct screamed at me to get back inside. I retreated into the house, locked the sliding door, and shut the blinds. My breathing was shallow, my heart hammering so loudly I thought it might wake Rob and Dan. I sat on the ottoman in the living room, positioning myself where I could see both the backyard door and my friends. Being near them, even asleep, gave me a thin sense of safety. That's when I heard the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the sliding glass door. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped the knife. I shook Rob awake first, then Dan. They groaned, confused and irritated, until they saw my face. "There's someone outside," I whispered. Someone was in the pool. They exchanged a look that said he's drunk and paranoid, but they followed me to the door anyway. I cracked the blinds just enough to peek out. Nothing. Rob shrugged. "Probably an animal, man." Dan yawned. "You're freaking yourself out. Go to sleep." They turned away, already dismissing it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there until dawn, checking the window every few minutes, jumping at every creak and rustle. Every shadow felt like movement. Every sound felt intentional. When the sun finally came up, Rob and Dan were gone. They'd left quietly, assuming the night had ended normally. I waited a while before going outside. Daylight made the yard look harmless again. Birds chirped, leaves rustled. The pool water shimmered innocently. I told myself I'd imagined everything. Then I found the ladder. A small stepping ladder sat at the base of the tree. The same tree I thought I saw someone sitting in. It wasn't mine. I'd never owned a ladder like that. My hand went numb. I picked it up and carried it toward the shed, planning to put it away, my thoughts racing. Maybe a neighbor? Maybe someone messing around? That's when I saw movement. A face appeared in the shed's small window. Not familiar. Not friendly. Eyes locked onto mine. I dropped the ladder and ran. Inside, I grabbed my phone and called the police, keeping my eyes glued to the shed the entire time. My voice shook as I explained what had happened, every detail tumbling out in a rush. While I was still on the call, the shed door opened. A tall man stepped out. Messy black hair, black t-shirt, cargo pants, thin but solid. He didn't run, didn't sneak. He walked calmly toward the gate. I relayed every detail to the dispatcher and then to the officer when he arrived. The police searched the yard, the shed, the surrounding area. They didn't find him. There wasn't much they could do. No forced entry, no theft, no clear crime. Just a description and a warning. Install security cameras, the officer said, and lock everything. A week later, my house was wired with cameras. I never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, when the pool light reflects just right against the water, I swear I feel that same sensation, that someone is watching, waiting. And I know now that owning a home doesn't mean you're safe. It just means you have more to lose.